That's fair. For some reason, I feel like, and I can't work out if it's my glasses or whether my phone seems to be picking up stuff slower. It is recording. Didn't realise that. Hello and welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another Revisitag challenge. As you can see, I am joined by the lovely Olivia, and I've also moved my tags into a teapot so that I can actually reach them, because the jar that I had before was too small for my hands and I couldn't get the tags out. So if you haven't watched Revisitag before, essentially people tag me in tags all the time and I am really disorganized, so I never get to them when the tag is relevant.
That's for me neither.
It's like months. Some of these tags I was tagged in the start of my booktube career 3 years ago, so I haven't got to them yet. Others I have done them before, but I haven't done them recently and I'd like to bring them back, and others are ones that I have been tagged in recently, etc. But I have no idea what tag you are going to pick out, so there's no prep. You will get our immediate reactions. Olivia has agreed to join me and is also going to pick some books to answer the tag, and if we don't like the tag, we can put another one in. If you don't, if you want to. I've never done that before, but we can if you want. So
okay, this is our tag. We have the Moody reader book tag.
The Moody reader.
Which is suitable because we are both
mood readers. Yeah. Well, I'm a Moody reader. You're a mood reader.
I'm a mood reader. What's the difference?
Well, I'm moody and in like grumpy.
Okay.
Whereas you're like, I like to set myself a TBR, then abandon it and read what I want to read. But at least I've got that list, so I know what I'm abandoning.
Whereas I do not have any list whatsoever.
No. So, making this spreadsheet, which was a year ago now, it was created by Slanted Reader a year ago, which means it was made 2 years ago. So I will go back and find that original tag video and put that in the description. And I will also put the tag questions in the description as well. If you find a book on my shelf that you'd like to use, feel free. But if not, I can always just put like a little graphic over there.
Yeah, I'm leaving you so much space to do that. Like, put it in front of my face. Like.
Do you know what? It's really funny because we were saying yesterday about how we like to film standing up because we move. Except I found that I've like done this.
I do this. Like I move side to side or like balance, but you. Well, you have to wander off screen sometimes.
I do. My favourite thing is wandering off and then pretending I need to go in the opposite direction. So doing like one of those. That's my favourite one. We've kind of already answered. But do you consider yourself a mood reader?
I do. This feels like a wedding.
I do. Take my hands and say, I do.
Do you consider yourself a mood reader?
I do. I do. But I try to negate that because I do have this bit of cognitive dissonance where I really love a list. And if I was to look at my shelves, which I'm doing as I speak, and go, what do I want to pick up next? I would really struggle with that. I would find that really overwhelming. I know I want to read all of them. Mm-hmm. So having my TBR narrows it down, because then rather than reading everything, I can look at my little trolley, which is cram-packed, to be fair.
Yes.
But at least I'm choosing from 20 books rather than 200.
Whereas I will choose from 200 every time. I'll see all the books, I'll think about what I just read and then be like, that's what I want to read next. Mm-hmm. But I also multi-read, so I will have 5 books that I'm currently reading or something, and then I'll be like, in this hour, in this moment, I want to read a contemporary, I've started one, I'll pick that one up.
Yes.
And then 5 minutes later be like, actually now I want to read
and now I want something else. Yeah. And then, yeah. That's how I know I am a mood reader, is the fact that I also like to read multiple books at the same time. And the way I've started explaining this to normies, so people who don't read the amount that we do, is I read books the way normal people watch television. You might go through the entire series, but you're more likely to watch a couple of episodes of one thing than an episode of something else. You think like standard telly, if you were to just like stick BBC One on for all day, you'd have an episode of everything.
Yeah.
That's how I read. And last November, Celine from Stuff Celine Does challenged me to read 1 book at a time. That nearly broke me, reading-wise, because I would pick a book that I was really in the mood for, it would be on my TBR, and then I would read about 40 pages and be done with it. I was ready for something else. And I'm really bad for DNFing books at around the 30-page mark if it doesn't hold my interest past that point. And I'm more likely to finish stuff if I am reading multiple books at once.
That makes sense. Also, the way you described how people watch television, I do the exact opposite. With television, I have a list lower down the list, and my mood doesn't matter.
No.
Which is funny because that's the exact
But the exact opposite of how you read.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. That's cool though. But maybe that's because you've already got that kick from reading.
Yeah.
So with your TV, you're like, okay, these are series that I've been told I need to watch or that I would like to watch. So I've got to do it. I've got to push myself to do those things.
It's true.
Interesting. Okay, question number 2. Do you set TBRs and stick to them?
No. So no. Back when I used to set TBRs, I really wouldn't stick to them, and sometimes it's funny to go back and watch my TBR videos and be like, I still haven't read that book. So at some point I acknowledged that, and I started to put together a TBR and pick a mixed TBR, just pick books from it, but it doesn't work. So when I do my 30 books in 30 days challenge, which I haven't done for a very long time, I would set a TBR and not publicize it anywhere, and I was much more likely to stick to it. But also it was a challenge, and challenges I want to win. It's
a challenge then, isn't it? You're setting yourself up to do this thing as opposed to a routine, which is what I need. And I have found that there is a sweet spot TBR wise for me. So with my after hours TBR, it puts 10 books on my TBR. Of that, I will read 5 of them. And I know for sure I will get to at least 5 of them, because as excited as I am for all 10, I know that that's my capacity when it comes to mood reading my way through them. And then I will usually put 5 more books on that are related to other things. So like book clubs, the Discord readathon that I'm hosting, things like that. And then there'll be other ones that I'm buddy reading, etc. And then usually there will be 5 books that I did not TBR, but I just was in the mood to read in between those other ones.
Give yourself the freedom to breathe.
So I will set myself a TBR of about 15 books, and then I will read about 7 of them, and I will read 7 of something else. So I do stick to it. And one thing that was really, really important was not punishing myself for not reading books on my TBR. So I know, like Becca in the Books, for example, if she doesn't read books that she puts on her TBR, she has to do another roll or carry it over. And I know, like, some other people with their TBR games, if they don't read books, they have to add more books the following month.
Or different consequences.
I can't do that, because then it makes me not want to read those books that I should have read anyway. So I'm much better at just, like, carrying them over. So, like, from my February TBR, for example, I've got boyfriend material and husband material that I was really excited to get to. I didn't have time for, so I will either carry them over this month or I will TBR them again. That then leads into more challenges, because I like to make things super complicated, where if I TBR something 3 times and don't read it, I have to unhaul it, because you've had 3 opportunities to be excited about this book and I haven't. So I think that also is the only punishment, and if anything, I'm punishing the book rather than myself.
And if you don't get to boyfriend material, it will
the end of our friendship.
So I was gonna not say the end of our friendship, because our TBR challenge will be the end of our friendship, but
it'll be another brick removed from the foundation.
Yes.
I understand. I'm really excited for it. I think I'm really
casually threatening you to read my favourite book.
To be fair, I even said in my TBR video, I'm picking this knowing that you'd be happy with me picking this, because boyfriend material was on my TBR. Technically, husband material was not TBR'd. So I can TBR boyfriend material twice. I can TBR husband material 3 times.
And then if you TBR husband material, you kind of have to read boyfriend material. So it's like a little bit of a loophole.
Little loophole. Question 3. Do books affect you emotionally?
I mean, some people would say no, because I don't cry, it doesn't affect my day. Like, I can finish the book, I'll close it, and my emotions are like, and I'll think about it. But I think it does. I don't know how to prove that.
I mean,
does it affect me emotionally? Yeah. If I read a sad book, I feel sad. And also, books affect me, I think they affect me more mentally than emotionally. Like, forming ideas, choosing what actions to do, it affects me a lot that way.
That's fair. I would say yes, because I am triggered by certain topics, so I would say that that's an emotional effect. But also, you get a 5 stars if you make me laugh out loud or cry. So I can't say that books don't affect me, because if you see, I've actually set up recently on my Goodreads a shelf specifically of books that made me cry. So yes, books do affect me emotionally, and also my emotions affect how I read books.
I think my emotions affect how I read books more than they affect me emotionally. So, yeah, that's the end of that statement.
That's fair.
It sounds
That's
like there's more to come.
I really thought there would be.
I'm struggling to articulate how books make me feel. And I think that summarises me as an INFJ. I don't like to talk about my feelings.
That's fine, we won't talk about them anymore. Unless the next question's about feelings, in which case we might need to talk about them more. It's about your emotions again. What genre do you pick up when you're feeling sad? I've just realised this is all about mood. Mood is based on emotions.
We chose a hard one.
We did.
If I'm feeling sad, so it goes two ways. So if I'm feeling sad, sometimes I want to feel sadder, because again, as someone who doesn't enjoy experiencing emotions, I'm very good at regulating my emotions. And sometimes, you know, you want to feel sad, and then I'll read a sad book, I'll read something about grief to kind of complement that mood, because I'm in a sad mood, I'm in the mood to read it. But then, like, for example, if I'm experiencing something quite sad that's really intense, I don't want to read that same subject. And what would I read? It's not a book. I would go to fan fiction, because fan fiction makes me happy, because I only read about one particular ship, and that ship makes me happy. So it's either fanfic, which is not any of the genres. Well, it's like a slice of life happiness.
Yeah, that's fair.
Probably. Or something sad to further that emotion. That's my answer.
I think all of that is completely valid. When I'm sad, like really sad, I am a crier. So I don't think I read when I'm sad. If I'm feeling like generally down, I will listen to an audiobook, and then it could be any genre. I don't know if there is like one particular genre that I will reach for. I do like gentle books to get through that catharsis of being sad. So if I'm actually like feeling like nothing, then I'll listen to a sad book and be like good, it made me feel something. I remember in my first year of booktube, so like 2021, I made a real point to be like, I don't want to read sad books ever again. Life is too short for sad books. And then proceeded to pick up, by accident, about 6 books that made me cry. Almost like fate was like, actually, Hannah, we're going to make you feel these emotions you're trying to repress. So I do like the catharsis of reading sad topics when you're sad. But I don't actually tend to read all that much. I listen to music because that makes me happy.
That is the thing that I do the most when I'm sad.
Yeah, I socialise. I like force myself to socialise. I watch films. I might say that actually there's like a lot of comfort reads. If comfort read could be a genre, I would probably lean back into books that I know how it works. Like even if it's not a happy ending, I've read it before.
So there's no stress involved in the reading process. You're like, I know how this is going to end.
Yes. So like Skullduggery, Lord of the Rings, like books like that I'm like, I've read these so many times that I can just keep picking them back up.
What you said about music is true. If I feel an extreme emotion, I'll be listening to the West Side Story album.
Yes, that's fair.
That's it.
That's fair. For me, it's my Dad Bod's playlist. I love my Dad Bod's playlist. I made you listen to it in the car. It's a good time. Are you more likely to read to learn, to read to escape, or to read critically?
So all of the above.
Yeah,
same. I think you see that in my wrap-ups. Like, I'll be like, this book had this and this wrong with it, but I loved it and I had a good time, and therefore it's 5 stars, even though I've listed all these flaws. Like, sometimes I feel like my reviews are like, if I don't tell you a 5-star rating, you could not know if I enjoyed it or not, because I'm happy to... It's like summarising my love of Twilight. I'm happy to love something, but understand there's problematic elements to it.
Yes.
Understand the flaws. And there is no perfect book.
No.
But there's a book that's perfect for you.
Yes. And perfect for the moment as well.
Yes.
I'm like that with Ruin Song by Juliet Ember, because I adored that. It was like the first book I read of the year that I read it, and I gave it 5 stars, and I adored it. It made me cry. It was powerful. It was really, really dark. And then I recommended it to loads of people, and they all hated it. They all hated it, and they were like, Hannah, this isn't good. And like, some of my friends didn't like it because they thought the plot was really rushed, and others didn't like it because they're writers, and they were like, Hannah. And I was like, I get what you're saying, but for me in that moment, I didn't want anything else, and that was just a really fun book. And as someone who, my writing is designed to entertain, I am never going to win a Booker Prize. I'm never going to win a women's fiction prize or Bailey Prize.
Can't wait for the plot twist when you do.
Could you imagine? Could you imagine? I'm not a prize-seeking writer. I get validation from entertaining people, whether that's scaring them, freaking them out, making them laugh. So as a reader, when I'm reading something, I really struggle to turn that critical part of my brain off because of studying writing and studying like literature. But so long as it entertains me and I'm having a good time, it's the books that are a bad time that they're bad because they're bad time.
And I think for me personally, I do find a lot of fun in analysing. And like, yes, I learned some of these skills in school and stuff, but I'm someone who really loves it's basically why you make a channel, isn't it? You enjoy reading, but then you just enjoy talking about it with people and breaking down why you loved it. Yes. And that's what I like to do. Like, in reading, I don't mind doing it by myself in my head, but that's why I'm so bad at watching TV. Unless I watch it with someone else, because then I can talk all the way through it and really annoy them with all of my comments and things like that.
But we love that. So yeah, I think when it comes to critical discussion, I'm trying to convince Olivia to set up a podcast with me where we take commercial fiction and analyse them critically and do it as a podcast. Like Twilight, where we talk about those critical questions.
Because there's loads you can
discuss. But like things like that, but like about modern books, I think would be really fun.
She's trying to convince someone who's never listened to a podcast.
Never listened to a podcast.
But I'm going to start my own one.
But we could start one. So leave in the comments down below. Do you think we should start a podcast? Because
everybody's going to say yes.
Yeah. Do it. Because if I can't believe you're into it, maybe you can. What is a book that made you laugh out loud?
Artemis Fowl.
That is funny.
But I think there's a vlog clip where I'm like trying to film me just like casually reading it and I can't stop laughing. There's some very specific things that I find particularly funny that tickles me, which is what we were saying, like a book can be perfect for you, and that book is just the perfect humour for me.
I'm looking at my shelves going like, which one is it?
It's so funny because I'm like talking, you're just like,
I'm like, where is it? Where did I find my ha-has? Anyway,
but yes, no, you can keep looking if you want.
I haven't got Artemis Fowl, but I know which one I want to talk about.
So yeah, I find Artemis Fowl like absolutely hilarious. I think it's a really good blend of, it's a fun story, it's funny too, but it's also got some good morals in there. So yeah, that made me laugh a lot.
That's fair. I'm actually also going to pick a middle grade. It's behind you, Darkwood. Gabby Hutchinson Crouch. So I have talked about this quite a bit on my channel, so it won't be a surprise to anyone else, but I don't know if I've told you about Darkwood.
Yeah.
So this is written by one of the authors that contributes to the Horrible Histories, like the TV series and book series. So funny. And this is a really funny middle grade take on fairy tales. Now, I am not a massive fan of fairy tale retellings, mainly just because I'm exhausted with them, not because there's anything wrong with any of them. I've just read too many at this point. But what I really like about this one is the comedy is very subversive. So you think you're going in one direction and then the punchline will be like a veer to the left. And it's very, very cleverly written. And because it's for kids, there are dumb jokes in there, but there are also very clever jokes in there for adults that tackle some really interesting topics. But the way it's written, it is designed to laugh. And I know I laughed audibly to this one, because Lizzie was reading Bitter or Freshwater. It was definitely a Mezzy book.
Yeah.
And it was a very hard topic book.
Probably
because
Freshwater.
I think it was Freshwater. And they were really struggling with that and like the feelings that come from reading that. Other end of the room, just giggling to myself. And every time I did, I then had to explain the joke as to why I was giggling to myself. They then went and read this book and really enjoyed it as well, so I hadn't ruined it for them, but I had definitely ruined the atmosphere by just giggling the whole way through. So Darkwood is the TLDR of that. Very funny middle grade. I'm glad we both picked middle grades though, that's fun.
That's because middle grade is a fun genre.
It is a fun genre.
Adults need to learn to have more fun. There are some funny adult books, but honestly they do. Not gonna lie.
That's true. That's true. We're back to being in our feelings. What is a book that moved you to tears?
None. I have an ice cold heart. I don't cry when I watch or read anything. I like to say that I've done this tag before now. I know I do. I know I have. I like to say I internally cry. What is a book?
I love that it's taken you this many questions to realise you've done this tag before.
I was suspecting, but then I was like, oh,
You're
no.
like, no, it's this question.
Yeah. The one that really got me recently, I think I read it last month, was The Last Paper Crane by Kerry Drury. And I believe it's young adult. It's one of those books where it's really hard to pinpoint the age category. And it's about the nuclear bombing in Hiroshima. Tough topic.
Yeah.
And it was just absolutely devastating, but it's just the best way to do a devastating subject, because it is set in the present day after the fact, and then you flash back to the history of when it was happening, and then you come back to the present day, so you know who survives and who doesn't, so it's not going to emotionally crush you when certain things happen, but it doesn't give away enough that you can predict what's going to happen. It's also for young adults, so it doesn't go into the nitty-gritty of body gore or the devastation. It kind of hints at it in its language, and you can do the rest of the imagining. And I think when you leave
harder
things
to read sometimes, yeah.
Imagination, that's when the emotions can really kick in. I was also reading it at the same time as a middle grade book, which was about the threat of nuclear war, but not the nuclear war happening. So it was like doubly brutal, and it had illustrations, which again were not like body gore or violent. It was more so like the shadows of people, and it was just it was emotionally devastating. 5-star, really recommend.
Mine was not as devastating as that. My most recent book that made me cry was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which is, I'm laughing.
Different type of tears.
I'm laughing not just because of different type of tears, but because I didn't want to read it. Like, I straight up, I have told people forever that I have no interest in reading Taylor Jenkins Reid. And it always really upsets people that I say this, but you know when there's a certain vibe you get from an author or the marketing of a book that you're like, this isn't for me, and there's nothing wrong with that in my opinion. Without trying it, I was never going to slander the writing of being like, I don't think it'll be very good, because I wouldn't know. I just knew that I wasn't drawn to pick up any of those books. And then my sister-in-law bought all of them, was systematically reading one, giving it 5 stars and moving on to the next one. And she and I have very, very similar reading tastes. So at that point, knowing that I had recommended so many books to her that she had given 5 stars, I felt like it was only fair to try one book that she recommended. And I found a charity shop copy, which very much made that easier, because then it's $1.99. I'm not buying it at full price. And it was in pretty good nick as well, to be fair. So I was happy. And yeah, I cried. I didn't like any of the characters, and I still cried.
But I like it because it's one of the ones where you don't have to like any of the characters. And for me, that's very talented writing.
Yes.
If you can, because I liked it, and I typically hate unlikable characters, but it was written in just such a very well thought out way.
Yes, I like messy characters. I like unlikable characters. I tend to write unlikable characters. And I was still really pleasantly surprised by that one. You've suggested that I now pick up Daisy Jones and the Six. Yeah. I now have to mentally get there, because I don't own it, but I do. Would you recommend it as an audiobook? Yeah.
Which is how I read it, even though I had a physical copy, and I was very stubborn. I was like, no, I am just going to read my physical copy. I don't care what anybody says. I'll do it the way I want to do it. And then my sister, so sisters-in-laws and stuff, she was like, the audiobook is the way to go. I was like, fine.
Yeah, okay. I'll do that. I will do that. Is there a book that you feel conflicted about, or you are unsure how you feel about it?
I'm very decisive in my thoughts. I'm like, no,
you're like, yes.
No, yes. Do you want to answer first if you got something in mind?
The first book that came to mind for me was Queenie, and this is based off what we were talking about the other day. So we were talking specifically about books that are described as going to be funny, but then are actually very sad, and that the way the satire is written is very, very dark. Now, I can't remember if it was your sister or your friend. Sister didn't like this because of the way certain characters are portrayed and the stereotypes used in this. It is a BIPOC book written by an own voices author, and as a white person, there's only so much that I can glean from that. I really enjoyed it because I like the fact that she's a messy character, she's an unlikable person, but you can't help, or I couldn't help but empathise with her, because her issues are universal. They are based in rooted misogyny and things like that. And it's one of those ones where when I read it, I loved it. It didn't fully make me cry, but I thought the writing style was so interesting that I gave it 5 stars anyway. And I have been recommending it since. But it is one of those ones where, having read other books by BIPOC authors, I've started recommending it less because there are certain things that I think are handled better from my perspective in those other books.
Which is fair.
So it's why I was very much like everyone should read this book. It's great. And now I'm kind of reining that back in and I feel more conflicted about it. So I do need to reread it. But this was one of the first hardbacks that my mum ever gifted me, because she usually buys me paperback books, but I saw this and wanted the hardback. I do still love it. My gut reaction is that I love it. And I think it's it's a book about depression. So it's going to be a very hard read. And I think when it comes to anything where it's those deeper topics, such as race, misogyny and depression, which this book has all 3 of, it's very hard to come down hard one side or the other. Yeah. Because of those reasons.
And all those experiences will be different per person. So you can't be like, this was wrong in this, because you can't say that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I don't think I could. Even if this was a contemporary written by a white author, I don't think I could come down hard on it either way, because these aren't the experiences I've had. I didn't empathise with this character because I've been in their shoes. I empathised because of the way it's written, and that's really clever. Yeah. But it has left me more conflicted than that was my gut instinct when the conflict question came up. I was like, yeah, for sure, this one is probably on the list.
I found my answer.
Go on.
So my answer is The Coward.
Interesting.
By Darren McGuinness. So this is actually a fictional book where the main character shares the same name as the author, and it's about his experiences. I'm just trying to see how much it tells you on the back so I don't give it away. But it's about his experiences as he gets into a car crash, becomes disabled, and then is coming to terms with this, while also the only person who can care for him is his father, who he hasn't spoken to in 10 years. And the author, if you look into him, he's also a wheelchair user who was also disabled during an accident. And so while this is a fictional story, and you cannot say that this is the author's memoir or anything, you can see that there's some connections to the author's life. And it was one of the first times that I'd read, I struggle with very angry characters. As I've said in this tag, I struggle with unlikable characters. He is one of the most unlikable characters that I've tolerated for this amount of pages. And I read it and I was like, I really don't know what to make of this. I don't know if I hated it. I don't know if I really liked it. So I gave it to Simone to read. And then she was like, I really like this because of the fact that we're seeing a disabled character who is not a nice person. And there is something to be said about oppressed people having to be portrayed as very nice, or having to just always be lovely to everyone so that people can maybe change their minds about how these people should be perceived. But realistically, no one is a monolith. All black people are not going to be nice. All black people are never going to be angry. You can get mean people who are black, who are disabled, who are queer or whatever. Yeah. So it was just, so then I was reframing my thoughts on it, actually it's nice to see someone who's disabled and is actually horrible to everyone and can be that way. But I'm not going to say that his character stays the same way. I do think you see healthy character development, which is something I love to see. It's so difficult because if I met this person in real life, I would not be their friend. Their sense of humour is not mine. Their way of talking is not mine. It was just, I guess I still feel conflicted.
But it's still important.
It's such an important book. And I still recommend it to people.
Well, you recommend it to me, that's why it's on my shelf. It's on my TBR this month.
I feel conflicted about it, but I liked it. Yeah. It's hard.
I think that's fair. And I think, obviously, with both of them being the same, where they're looking at really difficult topics, you saying about being a monolith, there's a massive discourse at the moment on TikTok because of one trans TikTok creator who is doing really problematic stuff regardless of their gender and identity. But something that they said that has made it more difficult to have these conversations with them about the toxic stuff they're doing was a whole conversation they had about how trans people are not your inspiration. You don't need to call them inspirational for living their life, because it perpetuates like
that's
this
inspiration porn.
Yes, yeah, exactly, and it perpetuates this idea that they have to be a good person and all these other things. And it's like, no, they're
otherwise they're not allowed to be how they are.
Yes,
which is not true.
So, but yeah, it's really interesting that we've both chosen. I said that all off camera. It's really interesting that we've both chosen books that are experiences that aren't ours directly, but we can critically read them, make a decision based on that, and still be conflicted afterwards. And still be like, I want to recommend it, but with all of these caveats about how I feel about it. I think that's also a testament to how well those books are read. In the TBR challenge that we filmed earlier today, I talked about how I tried chapters of books that I thought I wouldn't like. Coward is still on my TBR because I tried it and was like, this is going to be so interesting, and I have a sneaky suspicion it's going to be a conflicted book. And now I'm thinking I need to do a list of books that I'm like, I would love to recommend these, but
also I think you're going to like it more than me, because you tend to like angrier characters.
That's true.
You tend to like, sometimes I struggle with the internal conflict processing, but you prefer that more.
Mm-hmm.
I also think his style, not to say your humour is not mine, but his style of humour is more yours.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that comes from like, he is a very British humour.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm British, but I also lived abroad.
Yeah.
So I'm not entirely as well versed in the British humour.
I think there's a dry wit that is more harsh than just being deadpan.
Yeah.
And I think when I'm on my best behaviour, I'm deadpan. And when I'm on my worst behaviour, it's a dry wit that can almost be bullying. Like, and I think if he's not a nice person, it's going to
be like that. Like, sometimes I'm like, is he being mean, or is he like just like playing with this
Is
person?
it a joke, or
and as
yeah,
the character develops, it becomes clearer to me when he's being mean, when he's being like telling a joke.
Yes. Interesting.
I could talk about this book for a very long time, clearly.
We should have a podcast. So
how many questions do we have? Okay,
we've only got a couple. We have been talking for half an hour though. I love that. I'm not going to cut any of this out. Are you more likely to read on a sunny day or a cloudy day?
Sunny day. I like to go outside and read.
Mm-hmm.
I love the sun. I'll go outside and read. Summer is where I read the least number of books.
Mm-hmm.
Do not understand if that's because I'm more likely to get a bigger book and sit outside, so I can stay outside for longer reading, or if it's just
Being social.
I think I read the same amount, to be honest.
That's fair.
I think I read the same amount, but I pick up different types of books.
Yeah. I just need it to be a day ending in Y and I'll pick up a book. But I am more inclined to stay indoors and read when it's cloudy. I don't feel guilty. We were talking off camera earlier. I really struggle in the summer, not just to concentrate because of how hot it is, but also I have a physical reaction to the sun, which is not fun, but it means that I don't like going outside until it's evening time and it's starting to cool again. So I will read outside, but I'm not going to wake up at like 8 o'clock in the morning to go outside first thing and try and get as many sunshine hours in as like Lizzie or yourself might. I'm far more likely to go in the evening. So I think moody, cloudy days, I don't have to feel guilty about staying indoors. So therefore I will read more on those days.
Whereas what I think does change is that in summer I'm sitting outside and reading, and like how I typically read is I read 25 pages and I stop and I do something else. I stop and I do something else. I stop and do something else. I don't know if I need to like do a challenge and time it. If I get more reading done when I read periodically like that, because I don't sit down and read for long periods of time unless I go outside and it's sunny, then I'll sit and read for a very long time. That's what changes.
That's really interesting. There you go. Do you set the mood when you read? And if so, how?
No.
I was like, I would love to say yes, but I don't either. Lizzie does. Lizzie likes setting a mood, and I've definitely picked up some of Lizzie's habits. So I listen to ambient rooms now, which I never used to, or like reading sprints.
I don't.
Lizzie loves to burn a candle. I like having a candle going now, but I don't like none of these things I have to read. I could literally sit on my bed. I could be halfway through tidying my room, pick up my book to put away. It accidentally falls open and I'm just reading surrounded by clutter. Like, I absolutely can do that. Now that we've got a log burner, I do like having that going in the evening, which is why I forced you to sit in front of a log burner every day.
There's no force about it. I'm like,
it's been lovely. I really like that, but none of those things have to be the case. I will straight up just sit in my car and read if I need to. So No, but the things that I do have been influenced by Lizzie. So shout out to Lizzie from Bombadil's Bookish Things. You're an influencer.
Yeah.
It's official.
For me, it's basically, as I said, I usually read a little bit, do another task. There's no point saying ambience because I'm going to crash it down in like...
Because you're going to go and do something
the
else.
most I might do is make a cup of tea while I read, but then if I finish my 25 pages before my cup of tea is done, that's no problem.
Do you set something up when you're doing reading sprints? Because you've started sprinting more often now. Do you set up a reading setup then, or just...
I'm just sitting at my desk with a light that's powerful enough.
That's fair. That's fair. I tend to set myself up on the sofa.
I make a cup of tea.
Make a tea.
I always make a cup of tea.
Yeah, that's got nothing to do with reading and everything to do with our lives.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fair. We have one question to go.
Okay.
We've made it. We're nearly there. And we actually already answered this question, which is, do you leap from book to book? Yes. Or do you need a buffer?
I mean, I leap from book to book.
I'm a leaper.
I would say I have a buffer.
Which is the other books.
Like, if it's like if I just read a fantasy book, the next book I'm going to read is not a fantasy book because it's going to be a buffer. It's one I've already started reading, but it's a buffer.
Yeah. No, I think I'm much the same. I don't get book hungover like some people do. Yeah. You know, when you finish the book and you're questioning everything about your life and you can't pick up the next thing. I don't really have that. Because I'll go and have a cup of tea and I'll just start the next thing.
I say I don't have it, but sometimes I have it, but it's not like what people mean by it. Like sometimes I'm like, oh, that book was so good. I'm just not in the mood to read for the rest of the day.
That's fair.
And I'll read the next day. Or I'll be like, oh, I loved that book. But the next book, it doesn't stand a chance. Like,
no.
After I read The Raven Cycle, I think I read The Poet X. Another banging book that's amazing.
I love that you said banging, because that implies that you spent too much time with me now, because I don't think I've ever heard you describe anything as banging before, and I'm so here for it. It's a banging book. It is a banging book.
It's a banging book, and I felt like it was good, and that's because I just finished an all-time favourite book. I reread it and I was like, this is the best thing ever.
Yeah.
But it didn't hit me as hard the first time simply because I'd read something amazing before.
That's fair. I've read that book twice. I've cried both times. That book makes me cry every time. The first time I read it. The second time I listened to it as an audiobook because I thought, it'll be fine. I'll just listen to it passively. I still cried.
No.
I still cried.
There's no passive about Elizabeth Hathaway though.
There really isn't. She gets me every time. And I'm not going to lie, it is why I'm so nervous to read With the Fire and High. Because I know it's going to be good. I know I'm going to adore it.
Yeah.
She's an author by author.
It's emotional in a different way.
Yeah.
Because it's her prose book. But yeah.
But I know I'm still going to love it. I have no fear whatsoever. Yeah, anyway. Cool. So that's it. That's the tag done. Is there anyone you want to tag to try this tag? Even though you've already done it and therefore probably already tagged people.
Who can I tag that? Who do I know new since I've done it? So I can tag Jem from Bookish Gem.
Yeah.
Do you want to tag someone next?
I'll tag Lizzie because I gave her a shout out earlier and she needs to post more content. So that's just me bullying Lizzie into doing more content.
We choose more people?
You can choose one more if you want to choose one more.
I will tag Scott from Gunpowder Fiction and Plot.
Good shout. And I am going to tag Hannah Ryan for much the same reason. I'd like to see, she posted her most recent video. It was like the first video she'd done in 3 months and I'm so proud of her and I'd like more content. So again, I'm totally agendered in who I'm picking.
More content, please.
But yes, more content. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for making it this far because at time of recording we are at 39 minutes and I don't know how much I'm going to want to cut out because it's been so interesting talking to you about this tag. If you want to let me know that you were here, either leave a comment down below of a book that last made you cry, or if you're not a crier, a book that came very, very close. Or if you just want to leave an emoji to let us know you were here, pick something moody like a cloud or sunshine, just so that we know that you're there. Treat yourself to something from Waypoint because it supports me and my content. And most importantly, have a nice day.
Excelsior!